Okay, well, let's just, I guess, pick up right where I left off. Was making some weird images with code. So, what can we do? Um, this was the distance from the center point. Value was going up and down in a sine wave, and that's why it looked like that. So, let's see. Let's see what else we got. Common. Radial. Let's just run that guy. See what we get. Sorry, gotta load it up. Okay, so that's what radial looks like. 0 to 1 based on the angle. So starts out 0 up here. Whoops, I guess I'm drawing. But starts up 0 over there, goes around to 1. I guess what's kind of cool about that is we could do, actually let me undo this to steal back. Actually, let's just turn the distance into radial. Save it, run it. And then we can see what sine waves look like in a radial pattern. Ooh, yay, more stuff to mess with our eyes. You can see that it doesn't line up. Oh, okay, I should select it. Okay, anyway, it doesn't line up too well here. There's kind of a line. And that's because it's not smoothly coming around over there. And that's because we're not using like a multiple of pi, because for a complete sine wave, the wavelength is going to be a multiple of like 2 pi. So let's just do times math.pi times 2, and we'll just add that to it. Make sure that what we're seeing, okay, here's what we're seeing. We're starting to get some artifacts right in the center there because it's too tight of a pattern. So we'll jump back here. We don't need 100. Let's just do like 10. If we do 10, now we're going to see this pattern. So, okay, got the nice smooth transition over here where the radial value goes from 0 to 1 and loops back to 0 again. So anyway, that's how we can use that. What can we do with that though? Like, what's a cool thing to do with the radial pattern? Well, we could take the radial, which, you know what, let's rename this. We'll call this our radial. And then, you know, there's like a flower pattern that you could do, I think, because you could take the distance, and so let's remember what the distance is like. What am I doing? Flowers, what it's called right there. Anyway, I'll just run that real quick. Little reminder of what the distance looks like. It looks like this. 0 in the middle, heading towards 1 or greater than 1. So if we take that distance and we basically try to mix both of those, so take the radial and the output value, and is there a, how do I mix them? I forget. So yeah, you write your own code, but you still don't even remember how it works. Let's see, is there, oh, there's mix. Let's just add them together, I guess. I think you can do that. See what we get. And let me show you there. So kind of flower-like. And if we take that flower-like pattern and, you know, like we have this multiplier in the sine, in the wave function, instead of like 10, let's do 5. So we'll run 5 of them into the image, and there you go. There's 5 of them. So, you know, a little bit flower-like, but it's like adding the distance to the radial pattern. And so we're starting to get a little bit more interesting shape to it. Yeah, what else can we do with that? Well, I guess another thing I could illustrate is, let's just write some new stuff. I'll illustrate some clipping. So the idea behind clipping is, let's do a distance thing. And we're just going to do the distance, and I'll save this to like a new file, and just because I can. And oops. Yeah, we'll center that. Basically, you could have copied and pasted what I had above, but oh look, we'll call it 3 because I'm so creative. And so same thing we had before, but we haven't done anything to it yet. So, you know, remember, it's just this kind of thing. But the idea with clipping it would be take that distance and then the output, there it is, you could clip, which the idea of that is probably just clipping 0 to 1. Well, if I run that, it's not going to look any different because it naturally clips 0 to 1. But then if I take that output and also like kind of scale the output, that goes from 0 to 1 by like half. Let's run that, and hopefully it's kind of like some of this stuff will kind of make sense. So now it goes from 0 to half and gets, well, it's scaled down, but so it's clipped. Okay, I'm doing a horrible job of explaining it, but let's pull this out real quick. Yoink. So you take that out, you clip it, or sorry, you scale it by half, the output of it. So what was 0 is still 0, but what is 1 is now half, and what was 2 is now 1. So we run that. Let's look at the image that it creates, and it's like a bigger circle. And yeah, that's because out here where it was hitting 1 before, now it's only hitting half, and out here where it's was 2 before, now it's just hitting 1. So yeah, that's what's happening to the values. But then if we go back to the code and put that clip back in there, what we're going to find is that it looks like this because it's going from 0 to 1, and it gets clipped at 1. But then after that, we scale it down to half. And so all this region out here is just still at half, instead of allowing it to just keep going up till it hits white and, you know, kind of getting clipped by the part of the code that draws the image. So it's just another tool that we can use, because I guess what's interesting about that is, like, if we introduce clipping in with what we did before, like let's do output clip. Let's just try clipping that and running it. I guess that doesn't look any different, but let's try instead, I think it was clipping a range. So instead of the normal 0 to 1, let's do 0 to 0.5. And yep, one more parenthesis. Run it. And okay, I guess we ended up with this, which is kind of weird. But you can kind of see something's going on there. It like gets to the halfway point, and then that like limits the impact that the distance has on there. Maybe what I was kind of picturing in my mind was actually kind of the inverse. Let's do output dot invert, which like something that would go from 0 to 1 is now going to go from 1 to 0, like kind of flip the values over that way. So let's see what happens there. Let me reload it. Okay, now it's a little different. Kind of looks totally blown out there. So that's adding it together. So you can kind of subtract. And do I know what I'm doing? No, I'm stumbling in the dark, just trying to find something that looks cool. That's probably pretty evident, but there we go. So that's what happens when you subtract the distance from the radial. Wow, that's, I don't know, kind of weird. Another thing you could do is you could multiply. And I mean, this is not really any different than how like Photoshop layers work when they're mixing stuff together. You can add color together, you could subtract it, you could multiply it, you could divide it. And so it's just that these different numbers are being mixed together in that way. Yeah, not making anything terribly interesting right now, I guess. So now we're looking at this, which is really pretty much the inverse of the other flower kind of thing we were looking at earlier. But these are some of the functions that come to mind as like the commonly used things when we're mixing two layers together, more or less, and you might want to clip the range, or you might want to invert the values and things like that. So that helps us use these as tools to start making more complex things in our scenes. But yeah, that's probably enough for now. I'll maybe jump back in when I have a little bit more to share on this. Thanks.